Hey there everyone and welcome to another Neo Monsters video. In this video we're going through all the Storm monsters that came out in 2019. This goes from anniversary to anniversary. I'm including a few monsters that came out after the anniversary, I think maybe one, which was a PvP monster. But anyway, let's get into it. So this is going to have a few sections of the video, 3 sections. The first one we're going through the themes and sub-themes of the element. That is talking about the archetypes which Storm is built around, and also the stats of the monsters and a little bit about that stuff. Next we're going to go through all the new monsters, going through in the order shown. 2019 we got a load of piercing monsters, that seems to be the theme this year. And in the third section we're going to have a look at where those monsters fit into the element and where the element stands now and, you know, what I would choose to add in the future. There are links in the description to get to each of the sections, as always. So let's go and have a look at the stats of the monsters. So this lists all the Storm monsters, including the ones that came out in 2019. We're not going to include them when we talk about the themes in a second, but they're here right now. I'm going to go through the points that we've got here on the right. You don't need to look at all that information. This is from my forum guide where they're all listed. Anyway, so we've got 16 new monsters. There are a lot of super epics. There are a couple of super epics which are basically ones that were already in the game, but they've had either like a 5-star version added or the monster got changed, so it's very different. It's now unique, whereas before it wasn't, you know. So we're looking at a few of those which are not necessarily new to the game, but they are basically new because their movesets are so different. There were only 2 legendaries, and one of them is the Storm Moth. Each element got its own moth, so there was only actually 1 legendary other than that. So this has mainly been a year of getting Mythics into Storm. Because this was the first year of Mythics, you know, they added quite a few Mythics. So in terms of stats, the way Storm is, well, if you just watched my Holy and Shadow videos, you know that when I talked in Shadow, I said how it's kind of a mirror of Holy, how the stats are basically flipped on their head, and then the themes, it's either the same or the opposite for them. Well, Storm, I kind of look at in comparison to Holy as well. It's basically very similar to Holy in the control aspect. It's a control element like Holy is, but with the stats the other way. So Holy monsters are tanky and slow, and Storm monsters are fast and aggressive. And fast, aggressive, and control is a nice combination of kind of as a theme for the element for PvP. And historically, Storm has always been good in PvP. It was the best back in the day. Then, you know, all the other elements have kind of been given more stuff. Also, Storm is very focused around stun, which stun now has exceptional counters to it. So Storm isn't the strongest in PvP these days, but it's got a lot of cool control stuff, and it can definitely do a lot of good things. It seems to be more focused around PvP stuff than PvE stuff, I would say in general, just because fast, aggressive things have more impact there, and in PvE you kind of need a little more tanking, and you don't need the speed quite so much. But anyway, that's kind of it on the stats front. In terms of the speed, well, we can look here. You can see that there are no full defense monsters. It's very much aggressive. It's got the highest combination of very fast and fast. So in terms of percentage-wise in the element, it hasn't got more fast and very fast than other elements, but it has more very fast as opposed to fast. So in terms of combination-wise, if you were to, you know, add up all the speeds, average them out and stuff, I'm pretty sure Storm would come out as the top. It's got the fastest kind of in general monsters, and there are very few slow monsters, so definitely an aspect of the element there. So in terms of various things that you see on the monsters, this is kind of stuff which I picked up when looking through all the Storm monsters, is there's a lot of Overwatch and Chrono Killers. Elements tend to have an aspect in the element plus the counter to that. So Overwatch gets countered by Chrono Killer, so it has both of those in the element. There's also plenty of stun protection because there's tons of stun. Again, tend to go hand in hand. There's Purify and Stealth, so there's some nice defensive stuff there for, you know, protecting the team. And then, like I said, it's a control element. It's got a lot of stun and sleep in it. So looking at the first theme, we're going to look at stun, of course, because stun is well known that Storm is the stun element. And as you can see, there are a lot of monsters in Storm. The way we've got this organised is, on the left, there are a couple of super epics. Galvbane, everyone knows, is like the best starter. Brilliant sweeper there. And then Blitz Dragon with a step back on stunning entrance is very nice for a super epic. In the middle, we've got monsters that stun for 80 seconds. So a couple with stun revenge, a couple with the stun on the entrance. And then on the right, those are 5 monsters which stun by more than 80 seconds. A couple of them are on moves, which are secret skills. A couple of the rest are on entrances. Zeus Worm there, it's 200 seconds on one enemy. But yeah, anyway. There's a lot of diversity as well. When you look across these monsters, the way they use stun, like some use it for killing, some use it for killing too, some use it for control, some come in and stun and then remove themselves. And, you know, there's a lot of diversity in the way they use stun. And that has really helped in terms of building around stun. If you want to use it, you can use it in lots of different ways, and there's often a monster which fits the use that you want to have in your team. It's a very developed strategy, and it's a core part of the game. The 3 core parts in the game, which everyone knows, are stun, poison, and sleep. So Storm having lots of stun in it, you can see it's been developed since the beginning of the game, and there's a lot to it. The next theme is sleep combo. So I actually kind of forgot to put Goldtail in here. I don't know why. I think I was focusing too much on sort of combo-tastic stuff and things which work with that. Ironically, Goldtail does work in sleep combos because you can sort of bring it in when enemies are asleep and then it just starts up the sleep block. So Goldtail should be in here really. But what we've got is 2 legendaries in the middle, which really kind of powerhouse this as a theme. Strike with a 1-on-1, and then the Saint Feather, which can sleep the entire field, not leaving one enemy awake after a bit of time's passed. That's also got entrance control stuff, which we're going to get into in a second. So anyway, the other monsters around, they basically all fit with 1-on-1 or otherwise sleeping your team and the enemy team. So Zeus Worm here is not so obvious, but basically it has the stun bomb curse, so it can do that, and it has high speed as well, so it can do that just before, say, what Strike does 1-on-1, and then the time passes, and then when it ends, the cursed enemy dies and then stuns all the enemies. So that can be really good for then, you know, using, when I say like a sleep combo, you know, it's like you're not just passing time there, you're also getting a massive benefit from passing the time because you've got that curse on them, so all the enemies are out of play when your enemies wake up. And you know, there's various stuff around here that you can see. Centurion here, it has the roaring entrance with instant purify. So if you're doing any kind of sleep combo and you don't, you know, you're going to put some teammates to sleep or whatever, he's great to have to then come in and wake them up. Similarly, Drakazord, which I didn't put in here because I only wanted to put like the most sort of powerful stuff around it. Drakazord is high speed with Purify Mist, so that can come in and then purify your team. And similarly, it is Storm Element, so, and it's got Link Stun Flash as the secret skill, so it can come in and actually stun all the enemies and purify your team, which can really help you get out of bad situations with 1-on-1 and that kind of stuff. So there's some interesting stuff here with sleep combos. You would have seen the sleep combos in Fire too. Each element does it in its own unique way, and Storm is very much like kind of around control for that. The next is the Shells sub-theme. So there's only 3 monsters for this. However, the 3 monsters are very well known. Maybe the Super Epic slightly less because it is definitely weaker. But Motor Dragon has been in and out of the meta for forever, ever since it came out. Adding the 2 shells to the enemy team when it used to be just next in line, that was incredibly powerful for taking control at the beginning of a match. Otherwise, Lunatic, it just works over the course of a battle, creating bronze shells and controlling them. It's got a knockback too. Shells is definitely something which Storm does, and it's no surprise that there aren't too many monsters because it's one of those strategies which could very easily become overpowered if there's the wrong stuff given to it. And yeah, so it's fitting with control that Storm likes to do. And then the last sub-theme is entrance control. So again, another control theme. Storm very much has this control theme all throughout. Even though it's got these aggressive monsters which can kill things, it's built around, you know, Storm and this other kind of stuff. Sorry, Storm, I said. I swear I say Storm and Stun interchangeably. I probably messed this up and not realised I had a couple of points in this video so far. And I'm sure I'll do it further on, later on too. Anyway, on the left here we have monsters which can pull back any teammate. And on the right we've got monsters which can pull back themselves. And, you know, grouped with Super Epics and Legendaries. Now, entrance control, anyone who's done PvP at the top level knows it's exceptionally powerful. when you can decide which monsters you have in the battle at any given time, it means you can adapt to whatever you need for fighting the enemy team. And so if you have entrance control on some solid monsters that you want to have in your team anyway, it just improves your team so it becomes way more consistent. And that's often something, entrance control is often something which the top teams have. And when I say top teams, I don't mean teams in the top bracket, I mean the teams which like don't just get the 70, maybe 80% win rate. I'm talking about the ones which can get 85, 90% win rate. Those kind of teams have aspects in them like entrance control, which other teams don't necessarily have. We're now moving into the second section of this video, where we're going to have a look at the super epics first of all. So, Abyss Soldier Breaker, one of the better Abyss Soldiers. I've actually upped its rating since making this this slide. I think it's S or S plus in PvP. Basically what power this monster has comes from Retribution. Retribution is a very strong move anyway, so when this is used with other Abyss Soldiers, it will, this monster gets excessive force, so it easily kills things, and then when it's by itself, Retribution just one-shots things very easily. So Retribution, 130-second move, and if they're killing any teammates and just leaving this, which one of the issues with super epics is if they're not very strong, people will just leave them alone. This cannot be left alone, because Retribution is a fast enough move and reliable one-shot that it can't really easily be left alone. And then, of course, when it's used by itself, it gets the defense buff too, so it actually becomes pretty hard to kill. So this is strangely almost as strong as Legendaries in many cases. The solo stun pulse and time strike double, also because both the lone fish and the excessive force passive, they're both going to make that damage of that very good. And that can kill, two things, or otherwise stun pulse is great for control. There's a lot this monster offers, whether you use it with Abyss Soldiers or without them, it's very, very, very good. The next Abyss Soldier is Abyss Soldier Shock. This has a very different moveset to the other one. You can't use the two together, unfortunately, because they're solo monsters, and unfortunately, because they both are around stun, they would work very nicely together. So anyway, this has shocking entrance when you've got other Abyss Soldiers, and I would say it's pretty obvious it's got to be used with the other Abyss Soldiers. If you don't have that shocking entrance, if all it has is Time Strike and Payback Killer, that you're not going to get much value out of this. The step back, is pretty pointless when you don't have any entrance. I mean, sure, entrance control is great, but if it's on a monster that doesn't do anything, then you may as well just not have that monster in there. So you want to use this with other Abyss Soldiers, and when it's with them, obviously it stuns as it comes in, which is a very powerful stun, and then got both Time Strike and Payback Killer. The issue is, other than that shocking entrance, there's not really any way to set up Time Strike. And if you're using this, you can't use the only other Abyss Soldier which does any stun. So it's kind of not really that great in my mind. I think the Payback Killer is good, and if you're using an Abyss Soldier team, you'll probably want to use this just for the stunning, the shocking entrance, and then with the step back you can get that twice. That's great, but it's never going to be an exceptional monster because there are counters to stun that are very strong. And I'm just not a huge fan of this one. I think the other one is brilliant, one of the best Abyss Soldiers, but this one is too niche in its use and too unreliable. Next monster is Avionics. This is exceptionally good. You can see my tier ratings, both S. And what really gives this the power is the Raw Blood Fury. So Raw Blood Fury on a super epic is so unlikely that just not many super epics have that at all. And this with Roaring Entrance, it can be super powerful. So the reason why I say Raw Blood Fury and nothing else is because if there is a target for this to kill when it enters, then it doesn't matter about the rest of the moveset, because this can enter and then kill that, and then it can just start sweeping. And you don't really need the other moves, because it's going to be getting a kill every time it gets a turn. So if you can set this up, this monster is actually just really good anyway. However, if you can't set it up, then it has a way to kill a Protector or a way to kill a Death Revenge monster, which both are a little bit niche, that you don't want to use this in every PvP team. If you can set it up reliably with that Raw Blood Fury, then it could work in that team. Otherwise, you want to use it when there's a bit of a meta going on with Protectors. This is a Roaring Entrance Protector killer. The 200 seconds on that, though, is a bit of an issue. So with a give turn, it can be really good. And otherwise, yeah, you can build around this and it can be strong. Otherwise, certain metas it can be strong. In PvE, the payback killer is very handy for certain battles. And otherwise, it's a surprisingly good sweeper for a super epic. So pretty cool monster. I like what they did with this one. And the art is kind of crazy. So that's always fun when they do that. The next monster is Bulby Boom. This is not a super epic. It is a... I'm trying to remember the name of that. I think it's called Super Rare. Yeah, I think it's a super rare before it becomes epic at 4 stars. Anyway, this monster is surprisingly good. So a lot of people will discount this thinking it's very easy to kill. It's got high defense. It's all about the stat arrangement as opposed to the numbers there. So this having a high defense really matters. It's hard to kill this, and the 1700 health is, tanks quite a lot of moves. A lot of the moves, if you just sort of, it's just a hit, it does like 800, or maybe if it's at like a hit or it does 1000. But this with high defense takes more like, 600 and 800. So actually, you need to hit it a few times with those moves in order to actually kill it. So it's surprisingly tanky, and it's got an incredibly high speed, 93% speed, Link Stun Flash, which is very good for just coming in and making an impact. And the main thing about it is the Fuse Explosion passive. So this is a full-on upgrade to Stun Absorber. One of the big problems with Stun Absorbers is they get stunned out of the play, and then they sit there, and the other person just ignores them. PvE, the AI will still kill them, but Fuse Explosion, if it goes over 400 seconds, then it just gets blown up. Now this can combo with Zeus Worm, which can stun your own team, but you need to have an extra stun on top of that. You can't actually just full-on trigger it yourself, but you can imagine there are some combos which can make this work very nicely. This is a harsh counter to stun, and on top of that, it has this really awesome high-speed Link Stun Flash. It's quite tanky itself, which is surprising. It's only 7 cost, and Purify is exceptionally useful, as well as the Counter Strike. It can do some damage to Earth monsters. It's not powerful at all, but as a support monster, this does a lot for 7 cost. It's a very good addition. And just to say as well that you can only get this monster in the shop right now. It's for the 6-star tickets. So anyway, the next monster is Dual Dragoon. Now this was in the game from the beginning. I think it's one of the first ever released super epics that was like limited or whatever. But it's got a complete overhaul on the moveset. Now this has become a part of the Shells sub-theme, and it's quite a big addition for that. So it's pretty much got Tranquilizing Entrance, which is an immensely powerful entrance, and ultimately where the power of this comes is pull back on that Tranquilizing Entrance, because this is a cheap Tranquilizing Entrance and it's a tanky monster, which means in any team which can abuse this entrance, it's a really good target for it that is good to have if you don't have Sober King or Malwing, which are the 2 other Tranquilizing Entrance monsters right now. So this is a great target for pullback. And then otherwise, it creates some shells in the enemy team. It has these really useful knockback moves. The 250 seconds on the twin knockback is a bit slow, but it is repeatable. And you've got to remember, both of these knockback moves are raw, so they can ignore protectors, which means if you're running any kind of team that is a raw team or anything like that, doesn't need to deal with the protectors, you can more effectively slow down the enemy team and deal with them. Kinslayer is kind of useful, but where this monster really struggles is damage output. It's for those other uses, and it can be used very effectively in some teams, but it's not a sweeper at all. So you want to use this in combos, and it can be strong, but that's it. Next monster is Electric Cheetah. This is finally a 5-star version of the original monster that we all get right at the beginning. It is in the intro, we capture a monster, and it shows us how to capture Pokemon style, and we get this monster. So it then goes into a 5-star version, which is very similar to the 3-star version. It's definitely on theme. They didn't just do a complete overhaul of the moveset, and so things have been upgraded from that. Instead of just the Stunning Entrance, it's now got Roaring Entrance too. So it basically has Champion Entrance, similar to the last monster, which kind of has Tranquilizing Entrance. The Time Strike, very good with the Stunning and Roaring. There's often a target for doing that on. It's got Protector Killer as well, which always comes up, and Accelerate Team. This monster's got some good stuff on it. It's great for newer players, but ultimately, in the long run, it's not that strong, because while the entrance is great for, it comes in and makes an impact, the long-term impact is not good at all. It doesn't really have much to go for it. It doesn't have any way to set up the time strike. Protect to Killer is not that strong. Accelerate Team is great, but you use it once and then it's like, okay, do I use this again? There's like one monster in my team that can be accelerated right now, and you don't really use it. So this monster's fine. It's great for new players, and I'm really glad that they added it at least. It's good fun. Next monster is Houdinoid. Now this is the monster which I think technically didn't come out in time. This is after the anniversary, but I included it anyway because I just wanted to kind of get it out of the way. So anyway, this monster is a special rock, only 5 cost. It's tanky little auto protect. What's cool about it is when it enters, you can give turn to something instantly. It's got roaring entrance with that. So this is for stun protection, and more importantly, this makes stun absorbers viable. So I mentioned earlier about stun absorbers. They get stunned out of play, and then they just sit on the field and people leave them alone. Well, this can help with that, because if you put a few monsters back in your team from a stun absorber, and okay, sometimes my team, this gets stunned out of play, and then it's a big problem for me. Well, this guy coming in, he can bring it back into play. Otherwise, it's got auto protect, so most of the time they have to kill it and deal with it anyway, so it doesn't sit on the field as dead weight, even in the instances, where it can't give turn to a teammate. And the shield steal sometimes comes up as pretty useful. This monster is for PvP. That's basically its one use, for making stun absorbers viable, for mildly countering shields, and being a cheap thing that we can slot in to keep our team costs down while we have loads of legendaries and mythics. Next monster is Thug Betty. Like with all the other thugs, I've kind of struggled to really analyse them because you have to see them as a unit together. This one is kind of part of the team, but I actually thought it was going to be one of the more important ones. I thought that the Dream Hunt would be really good because you can combine the thugs with one-on-one, and then this can sweep, with the Dream Hunt. Also, the Revenge is quite strong, killing one random enemy with it just instantly kills them. Doesn't matter about shields or anything like that. However, this monster turned out it's not necessarily a key piece. It's fine. It's one of the thugs and it fits in, but it's not so much so important as other ones. The knockback 250 seconds is never really that strong, and then the Dream Hunt, if you are using it with a one-on-one combo or you're using it with the Betty, Becky, I think her name is, the Thug Becky, the one that sleeps all the enemy team when you feast it. That's basically where Thug Betty gets to sweep, maybe 1, maybe 2 monsters. But anyway, it fits with the thugs, but nothing super special, and doesn't really have any uses outside of the thugs. Next monster is Thorhoof. This is a 5-star version of a 3-star monster that we can get on the islands, and it's fine, but it's only really for new players. I'm not really going to go into huge detail. The Desperate Stampede is not good with the fact that it doesn't have hold ground, but the shield on entrance means that Zealous Attack is kind of better. Element Accelerate is great, and at least this doesn't have the issue that the water one has, which is like, it's got Element Accelerate, but then it's got solo Desperate Stampede. So if you want to use it with water monsters, you can't do the Desperate Stampede, but if you don't use it with water monsters, then Element Accelerate doesn't accelerate anything. So this one it works kind of with that, but then it's got the issue that it doesn't have hold ground for the Desperate Stampede. But Life Flip Friend is always a good support move. It's got high attack with the Zealous Attack, so that's fine. It's alright for new players. That's it really. Next and last super epic here is Virabit. This is a monster which we can get on the islands. It's one of the 3 super epics that we can pick up there and catch, and it's always been a weaker one, but this got a little bit of an overhaul. I can't remember exactly now what it had before. Maybe it was, well, anyway, whatever. It's got Overwatch and high defense with hold ground and shield entrance. Actually, this is an incredibly tanky monster now. I think that was the change which made me put this in. That basically it's been made to be incredibly tanky with the shield entrance, hold ground, high defense, high health. So this is very much a support monster that can heal all when you need it to be, when you need it to. As well as the Overwatch, meaning like the general design here was Overwatch hold ground with heal all. So if your team gets all hit down, then this can get a turn and instantly and heal them back up. Time Strike is not very powerful because its attack is low. Similarly, Counter Strike is not super powerful, but if you're against Earth monsters, or otherwise you can side this in for Earth monsters, when you come up against an Earth team. It's a fine first super epic that new players can use, but it's not super powerful. So now we move on to Legendaries. There are only 2 Legendaries to go through. This is the one that isn't the Moth. So we've got Bundum, and it's a bit of a wacky looking monster and a bit of an unusual design. So this is pretty tanky. It's got the rounded stats, which means it's always, quite tanky, but not exceptionally tanky. It's got whole ground too, so it's hard to sort of take out in a flash. Then it can switch between having either maximum attack and minimum defense, or the other way around. And basically, it doesn't really kill anything with Power Slash unless you do the Terminator form. However, doing the Terminator form means it's going to be killed quickly. But bear in mind that it's got high speed, it can switch into Terminator form very quickly, and then use the Power Slash. This can come in and make an impact pretty quickly. Whole ground means that it can still survive one hit, even though it's got minimum defense. So this can come in and kill something quite easily. That's often how it's used, but also it has a lot of potential with combos to pass time, which Storm obviously has a lot of with the both stun and sleep in the theme. And so Double Drain Survivor, it's very important to bear in mind. Both of these moves, these attack moves, are only 100 seconds. Power Slash is normally 160, Double Drain Survivor is normally 130, so these being faster means the payoff for doing them, if you can do them, is a lot better. That 100-second Double Drain Survivor, with the fact it has whole ground, is very good. And then also you've got the 300-second Nova Blast, which I can't quite see in this video whether or not that is 300 or 400. It's been changed to 300, even if it doesn't say it in this screenshot. And that is exceptionally powerful because, if 300 seconds is not too bad to pass. It does take a while, but it is possible to pass to then charge survivor moves. And all Nova Blasts are 400 seconds, but this one is 300 seconds. With one-on-one, one-on-one is a great way to pass that amount of time. And yeah, it's just an enormous payoff. You've got to make sure you're not in Guardian form when you use it. I know a few people who've used that at critical moments where they just went, oh, Nova Blast is charged, I'll use that. And then they find out, oh, whoops, I had 1 attack, so it did no damage to any of the enemies. But anyway, cool monster design. You can do combo stuff with it. It definitely fits with that sleep combo theme stuff that we saw at the beginning of this video. And it's pretty powerful. The Storm Moth, very much a storm monster in that it does stun. Each of the moths are made on the theme with the element, and Storm Moth is no different. It's got shocking entrance when it comes in, it's also got stun pulse, and then its 2 attack moves are Time Strike and Time Strike All. Another important thing to note, so on all the moths they have assisted hit all, however on all the other ones they don't have max attack. This monster has max attack, so that assisted hit all does a lot of damage. I think it can do up to like 3000 or something like that, which is actually something that you may choose to use, even though it's a 250-second move. How I would personally choose to use this monster is to focus on the Time Strike as opposed to the Time Strike All, because since this has high attack, and and anything with Time Strike All right now actually has high attack, but anyway, you want to do a more sort of controlled aspect, I would say, in general. If you just stunned all the enemies, you don't necessarily want to just kill them all off, because then a whole new set of 4 enemies come in. But Time Strike All sometimes, does come up. And this can do some quite cool stuff with a Time Strike, then maybe a Stun Pulse, then another Time Strike, and then kill itself off with a Flaming Moth, because, you've got the benefit out of it from the stun and stuff. So it's a pretty cool moth. One of the stronger ones. It does have the disadvantage of stun often gets countered in PvP, but, it's pretty good, and you can see how it works quite nicely. The second form version, that's where it lacks a little bit, because assisted hit all isn't, really any useful. Isn't useful. The Time Strike all also is not good there. The Time Strike is quite a bit weaker, and so it can do Stun Pulse and Time Strike, but then it doesn't have any way to kill itself off. So that's definitely something you've got to bear in mind if you try and use this, that you probably want a way to kill it off in case you get the 5-star form, if someone kills off your Pooper before it turns into this moth. So it's held back by that, and it's held back by the Pooper like all the other moths. So it's quite decent, but for a moth, but it's not a great legendary in general. Moving on to mythics here, the first mythic to look at is Aurelius. I messed that up the first time. So this is a really cool mythic, and the main thing you want to do here is use the secret skill. That means it's constantly charged, so it's like the other monsters which have energy charge and energy blast. However, in the awakened form you get the secret skill, and then you can just have it permanently charged. Now, you don't really want to use energy blast or energy accelerator. I don't really know anyone who uses those, just the AI decides to likes using those. The thing you're going for here is plasma blast, which kills 2 things and does piercing. That just kills 2 monsters, no questions asked. And if you've done the charge, the eternal energy core first, every time this gets a turn, it can kill 2 monsters. So very powerful sweeper. The main thing is that it's very slow to get, well, very slow with all the moves. 200 seconds on that secret skill to get started is not nice at all, and then 200 seconds for the sweeping move is again very slow. So this monster really benefits from anything that can give turn to it. If you can do that in general, there are ways that people have come up with. For example, there's a monster called White Titan, which when it enters it gives turn to the highest seconds monster. And so what you can do is you can use Eternal Energy Core at the beginning and then bring in a White Titan, and it's highly likely that this monster is on the highest seconds, so it gets a turn and then can start sweeping. Of course, you've also got the built-in stun converter, so anytime you get stunned, this will get a turn and can kill more. So this is a massive counter to stun, especially because you're killing 2 each time. If you can hit any stun at all, when you hit the 2, you get another turn, you can kill 2 more. So against stun teams, this will just devastate them. And, there are lots of times where this is just exceptionally powerful because of the stun converter. Hold ground means it's going to survive quite nicely too. It's got rounded stats. So rounded stats plus hold ground is going to make it hard to kill. Pretty cool monster that you can build around to make it really good. I think by itself, it's not the most exceptional monster. It kind of needs to have a little bit of stuff built around it. But then it's a very strong monster. Next mythic is Deus Ex. This is a cool monster for the passive skip ban, which stops anyone from skipping at all. Obviously against AI that doesn't matter at all. In PvE when we meet this, it's just really annoying to face because we can't skip. That's mainly for PvP though, where not being able to skip, there's the added benefit not just because you think, oh great, they can't skip, but actually it means you can skip whenever you want. So you can line things up however you like, as if it was like in PvE. Normally in PvP, if we skip behind something, they can skip back and force us to take a move. But with this monster in play, if you skip behind an enemy, they can't skip back. So you can skip however you like and really line things up nicely. So with certain other monsters, if you're trying to do any kind of control strategy, this monster is going to really help out your team. And it's got the rounded stats, it's got low speed now, so it's higher health than the monster we just looked at before. With the hold ground and life lip unlimited, it can keep itself alive very nicely. And another thing to note there is that a lot of monsters with hold ground and life lip, or life lip unlimited, is in PvE you can skip behind things, so you wait until it gets hit to hold ground, then you life lip unlimited, and that's a great way for keeping it alive. But you can't do that in PvP. However, with Deus Ex, you can do it in PvP. So this can survive exceptionally well in PvP just by doing that. And then, of course, after some time's passed, it can start killing things with Survivor. It's also got the ability to switch a friend and switch an enemy, and the double counter strike. This is basically a counter to Earth, in that Earth strategies are generally built around throw, and if you can switch enemy, you can bring in one of those rocks and put one of their one of their monsters to the back of the team. So if they want to throw, they have to sacrifice that monster that you just put to the back of their team. The double counter strike as well, of course, offers counter to Earth, punishing them if they have any Earth monsters in their team. So a lot of cool stuff in this monster. In terms of how powerful it is, it's quite hard to judge because it's mostly about that skip ban passive, which really depends on exactly what is going on the field, whether that makes a difference. I'm hesitantly saying that this monster's quite strong but nothing special, but it may prove to be stupidly good in the long run. The next monster is Don Rilla. Now this monster is stupidly good. This is the anniversary mythic, and it just kind of has it all in terms of the sweeping power. So it's got high defense, surprisingly high defense with hold ground and it can heal itself as well with both the Repent and the secret skill. Then the attack moves are kind of complicated to go through, but basically they, in all situations other than when Don Ritter has kills but nothing else on the field has kills, so in every other single situation that you could have in terms of monsters with kills on the field, he can do a one-shot attack. And there are just different ones that are like that. The main one you want to be using is Second Gun, so if you have a kill with a teammate, then Don Ritter can be doing a one-shot attack every time he gets a turn, at 100 seconds. So yeah, that's basically the way he works. He just sweeps, and where he becomes super powerful is with one-on-one, because he's got sleep immunity, he stays awake, and if you faced one-on-one much or used it much, you know that basically the way it becomes super powerful is if you have some high-speed aggressive monster with that, because if you take a look at, say, Bunker Beast, if you use Bunker Beast with one-on-one, it's a lot more balanced because Bunker Beast has to load itself first, so a lot of time has to pass before it can actually start killing things. And that means that whatever monster of theirs is awake has a bit more of a chance to come back and fight back. And also, Bunker Beast in the long run, it kills at 180 seconds, like every 180 seconds. This kills at potentially every 100 seconds, and it can do that right from the first turn. So it hasn't got high speed, it's got kind of mediocre speed, but it's going to be sweeping like crazy, and with the high defense hold ground, it can heal itself. Whatever they have that's awake, and whatever comes in, cannot deal with this monster properly. So this is brilliant with one-on-one, and otherwise it's a really good sweep. It's just very consistent, and the high defense hold ground meant that it's going to work nicely in pretty much whatever team, wherever you put it. Next monster is XYZ-999L, a bit of an odd name for a monster. It looks a bit crazy too, with all the different guns and stuff on it. But anyway, this monster has really had a lot of hate for it. The issue with it is the two passives. So this Iron Field has actually been buffed. It stuns for 50 seconds now. But yeah, having the fact that it stuns monsters when they enter is a bit of an issue in PvP, because stun converter and stun counter monsters are very common, and this basically gives them roaring entrance. And worst off is if they have a stun counter on the field. If any teammate enters, then that stun counter instantly gets a turn. So you are benefiting the enemy if they have any stun converters or stun counters in their team. This is more PvE based. It's better for PvE where you're not going to encounter that quite so much. However, if the meta changes massively, then this could be brilliant again in PvP. And the stun absorber, I've mentioned a couple of times in this video how stun absorbers can be stunned and then just left out of play. So stun absorber is kind of a downside. I would highly recommend using this monster alongside something with stun counter, so that this won't get stunned. And then it's basically like it's stun immune because the stun counter's on the field. But anyway, other than those passives, which can be a downside but can be a massive upside, the moves on it are incredibly powerful. So Time's Up, that double Chrono Killer, is just really, really good. On a high-speed monster too, it's got good attack, so it just kills anything as long as there's a Chrono target. That's very powerful. Cobalt Coating makes this exceptionally tanky. In the times which you want it to be on the field, say you're using this PvE and there isn't much like stun counter, stun converter in the team you're facing, then the stun you get on the enemies is going to be so good for staying in control. Keeping them out in play for 50 more seconds when they enter is just nuts. And having this as a tanky monster, and it's got Double Drain Survivor, so it heals itself and kills two things. It's got high enough attack that Double Drain Survivor just kills most things. This will be just help you win the game so easily. It's just a double-edged sword, because sometimes it works really well, and other times you just get countered hard, and this is a big downside for you. The secret skill is meant to kind of knock back any stun counter that's next in line, but lining that up is very tricky. It's a powerful move anyway, but yeah, that's what this monster is in general. It's a kind of works sometimes brilliantly, and then the other times you hate it and just wonder why on earth you put it in your team. So now on to section 3 of the video, where we're going to have a look at where these monsters fit in and where Storm stands now. So the new monsters that were added, There were only 2 legendaries, there were quite a few super epics, and then the 4 mythics. But in terms of the themes and where things fit in, there's actually a lot that went into these themes. We even got 1 new monster for the Shells sub-theme, so that we already had. It only had 3 monsters, it's now got 4. Stun has always been the biggest theme in the element, and sure enough, yeah, we got 7 new monsters for stun here. Some pretty cool additions there. Sleep combo theme, we've got 4 more things. So you might have been wondering why I put sleep combo as a theme as opposed to a sub theme. It's because I knew I was going to add 4 more monsters to that. These monsters all work very nicely with that. Don Riddler I went through. That one's obvious. The Aurelius I didn't really say. Basically, you can use the Eternal Energy Core before, say, a 1-on-1, and then it means that 200 seconds is not a downside anymore because everything's asleep anyway. Then Bundum, I said that one's obvious with it. Great if you can pass any kind of time. And then the XYZ, it has Double Drain Survivor, which is just really, really good. If it's going to pay off with the passives and they're not going to backfire, then having Double Drain Survivor on this monster is very powerful. And then we've got the Entrance Control sub-theme, so a little more added here. I didn't really mention it with the Avionics, but it has the instant send back, which in hindsight I should have definitely mentioned. If it ever comes in and you don't want it on the field, if it's not set up nicely, it can just send itself back immediately. Otherwise, it can actually send back a teammate, and it's only 50 seconds, which is much faster than other sendbacks. So it can come in and get you out of trouble while then, doing its own thing for sweeping. And then there are a couple of other monsters there with some entrance control. Definitely getting a little bit more development there. So we also got a new theme, which is Time Past. Now, there are various survivor monsters in Storm, but we really got a lot more this year, and I'm very happy because while stun is great, it's got a lot of counters, and there are a lot of times that stun just won't work that well, that killing off those stunned enemies is not really what you want to do. So having another benefit here for passing time with stun is really, really good. So I talked about each of these monsters as we went through them. The big ones are all the ones from this year, and then we've got the ones from previously down in the bottom left here, with the Double Survivor on Stratostrike, the Stun Bomb Curse on Zeusworm, and the Link 250 second Mega Bomb on Don Dolguini. So there's a lot of benefit here and real potential in Link Storm for passing time, as opposed to just, say, using Stratostrike with other Double Survivors or that kind of thing. You may want to actually do it in Link Storm now to get the benefit from these monsters. So where does Storm stand now? We have better payoffs for passing time, so that's great. That's just going to make Link Storm better for that. A bit more push for Link Storm as opposed to just Storm in general. The versatility is always going to be good for PvP. And there are various things which work well in PvE. We were talking about the XYZ Mythic just now and saying how that's better in PvE. If you do it with, say, the 1-on-1, you pass time, and then it's got the Double Drain Survivor, it can also double its own defense, the passive's benefiting you, that can be exceptionally powerful for PvE, which is great because Storm, historically, had PvP stuff, but not really PvE stuff. So, in terms of defensive support, there wasn't really any of that. There's stuff around though. There's, like I said, lots of stun protection and purify and stealth. So there's that stuff around that can be used. There just hasn't been much more added. A bit more aggression and focus on the time passed to do stuff. That was real theme, I guess, in the storm monsters which we saw this year. And then one of the issues in Storm is that a lot of them, they need certain conditions in order to actually be good. The XYZ Mythic, I keep bringing it up, but it's a classic example of a monster that can be great in the ideal scenario, but it can also be absolutely terrible in the wrong scenario. And Stun has that kind of problem in general, because there are such harsh counters to Stun. It can backfire, and a lot of Storm has that issue, where it has this control stuff, it has powerful stuff, but if it doesn't line up nicely, then it can backfire or just not work at all. So yeah, that's Storm in general, I would say. Talking about its strength, it's a strong PvP element, and it's got some potential in PvE. Definitely helped out with that this year. And yeah, let's have a look at what I think it needs. So looking at this first point here, I'm talking about how stun was originally a way to set up and kill an enemy. If you look at the 3 core strategies, stun, poison and sleep. Poison, you poison the enemy, then you kill the enemy that's poisoned. Sleep, you put them to sleep, then you kill the enemy that's asleep with Dream Hunt. Stun, very similar. You stun them and then you kill them with Time Strike. That was the original plan. However, with time, what's been pretty obvious is that stun and sleep are actually better at taking monsters out of play, and then you kill the monsters that are still in play. And so I would like a little bit of return to the old way it's set up. Something actually like making you want to do that, making you want to kill the stun monsters. And my thought with this is, say, move Timebreaker. So I just want to say first, Time Strike Double is a great example of something that brings you back to that old way of it being set up, because you are killing that enemy that's out of play. However, your payoff for doing for putting that monster out of play is you get to kill something else too. And so this Timebreaker idea is that it's a very fast move that does piercing as well, so it just kills the thing even if it's like really buffed up, which actually would make it work a lot better in PvE, because currently Time Strike is not that powerful, and you can stun enemies out of play in PvE quite nicely, but actually like killing them off or doing something with that, you have to kind of look at other things as opposed to just, killing them with Time Strike. So I think Timebreaker would make Storm really good in PvE, where you actually really want to open the enemy team up to stun, then you stun them and then you can kill them off, and it doesn't matter about their buff stats or that kind of thing. Then we've got the fact I say I don't want more shells. I mentioned it with the shells sub-theme that it's one of those strategies that has the potential to just be absolutely broken, and Lunatic really pushes the boundaries on what is okay. It's a slow monster with a slow knockback, and that's just about what keeps it in check. I've used Lunatic very effectively sometimes, and yeah, if they add too much stuff that adds shells to the enemy team without enough stuff that like is really viable, that benefits or kills off shells, they're going to have an issue. So I don't really want them to make any more shells monster, or like, maybe one next year, maybe one a year they could do. Anyway, and then lastly, I'm actually going to be moving to the next slide to talk about this. I would quite like something that's different from stun. So Storm has something else that is still unique to it. I say stun is not unique to Storm, but stun is like the thing which Storm does most. And I would like for there to be another thing that's similar kind of idea, but a different spin on it. So on this slide here, we've got 2 monsters that I've designed that are built around this time lock effect. So I realise now actually it doesn't explain time lock, so I'm just going to go back to the previous slide, because explaining time lock, it's based around exactly 150 seconds. So if you time lock something, then it puts it to 150 seconds, and then the time lock strike is like a time strike, and it can only be used on monsters which are 150 seconds or more. But it's a faster move than time strike, and it's strong. It's very strong, stronger than time strike. So you can use it. You can use time lock strike with stun stuff. So there's a bit of crossover synergy there, that you can stun stuff, then use time lock strike as like a more powerful version of time strike. But also you've got this move which time lock, which you can push an enemy to 150 seconds, and that doesn't count as stun, so it can be used on stun counters and that kind of stuff. There are fewer counters to that. And anyway, so looking at these 2 monsters which I've designed here, let's look at the left one first of all. So both are legendaries, both are quite slow speed. This one is a tanky one, sorry, I say slight slow speed. It's got roaring entrance. It's quite tanky, and it's got roaring entrance and stun immunity. When it comes in, it can kill a protector. This was designed mainly when we had the protector issue, so a little focus on that there. So it's got the swift rule breaker, so it can kill something when it enters, and otherwise it can use the move time lock to give turn. Now this is very similar to what we had on Houdinoid. I designed this before we saw Houdinoid, but the idea there is if you have a teammate that's been stand out of play, this monster is very good at coming in and helping out with that kind of thing. So it can do double send back onto monsters if they're over 150 seconds. I can't remember if it needs one target or both targets to be over 150 seconds. I think maybe both targets. And so basically it can help you if you've been stunned out of play, and otherwise give turn to something that's been stunned. And then also it could come in and just put an enemy out of play with the time lock single. You can see that it's 160 seconds. That's to be balanced. I have to be very careful when trying to do this, because it locks them to 150 seconds. So this move is only slightly faster than that when you pot it, and so it can keep one enemy out of play. The 3 times it uses that. The time lock give turn also multiple uses, only 5, like normal give turns. And yeah, this is a support monster in terms of keeping an enemy out of play, giving turn to teammates. When it comes in, it can really help turn the tide if you're in a bad state. And it's got assisted thunder there to assisted thunder to push the fact this is a storm monster and it's meant to be played in Link Storm. The other monster on the right here is more kind of sweeper version, but it doesn't do the sweeping immediately. So it's quite low speed, and this doesn't have roaring entrance. It has camouflage instead. It's a more aggressive monster with camouflage and time lock revenge, which means when it gets killed, then it puts a random enemy to 150 seconds, which is quite a big reason not to kill it. So with both the camouflage and that revenge, it's hopefully going to sit on the field quite nicely. Then what it's got is Link time lock single. So this is similar to the time lock single we have on the other side, but you've really got to play this in Link Storm, because again, I'm saying this strategy should be a Link Storm strategy. I think it should be the sort of upgraded version of stun that only Storm can really pull off. So you can keep an enemy out of play. I think this can actually, I can't remember the exact numbers, I think it can kind of keep 2 enemies out of play if you've got it potted and accelerated. But it only has 3 uses, so it can't do an enormous amount, and this doesn't have roaring entrance, so on a slow monster that kind of thing is fine. It's got the time lock strike we talked about for getting kills, and it's got bloodthirst. The secret skill is the really big payoff for surviving, so it's got that camouflage and the revenge to stay alive for a long time. And then if 200 seconds pass from the first move, then what it can do is it can set 2 enemies to 180 seconds. And then this will, it's timed, so after the secret skill passes the 30 seconds, if you have it potted at all or anything, then you can kill one of them with time lock strike. So it sets up a kill, it puts 2 enemies out of play. You don't have to use it for the kill, but it does set up 1 kill, which you might need that for bloodthirst. So there's quite a bit that this monster can do, and I think I don't know exactly how these monsters would be, whether they'd just be too powerful, maybe time lock is just too powerful in general, but I think it'd be really cool to build a new archetype for Storm that does the control, because it's very much a control element, but does one that is less easily countered, and that works very much in the theme and works in synergy with stun. I think that would be really cool, and I think that would make Storm very viable in the future. As we have more sort of viable stun protection and that kind of stuff. That can just push Storm out too much, because Storm is built around that stun. So anyway, thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting and that you enjoyed looking through all the new monsters. Next we've got the water video, which is going to be the last one in this series for this year. So I'll see you in that one soon.